Thank you everybody for joining us today. I say we, you actually come for Tony, not for me, but so Tony's doing all the hard work. He's going to teach you how to read people like a book. So I've known Tony for a fair few years, and every time I see him speak and tell his stories and his and the lessons he's learned over his coaching and his storytelling, there's always something new that I learn about the kind of interactions and the minutiae about how people work. I'm not going to do an introduction to Tony because I'll do it a disservice. I'll let Tony introduce himself. But I look after the marketing at Spotler. I have done for almost 10 years, and Spotler is a marketing automation platform. So we're always wanting to do better marketing, perform more marketing. Tony, if you can go to the next slide. And there's bits and pieces in the marketing world that we can definitely do better at, and knowing what people are thinking or how they act is one of them. So we will be giving you a copy of the slides, so don't feel you have to take every little note down. We'll give you a copy, and the session is being recorded, and so we'll send it out afterwards. We've got around 45 minutes to an hour, but it'll be remiss of me if I didn't tell you what Spotler offer before Tony gets into his session. So it's just a little overview. You know, as a marketing automation provider, we definitely offer email and SMS. We also, for those that are doing transactional emails, think invoice reminders and so forth, cart checkouts. We do the transactional email where you need it 100% delivered. We've got IP lookup, tell you who's on your website, the companies on your website. You know, for the commerce side, shopping cart abandonment, live chat bots, WhatsApp. We're one of the few companies that have approved WhatsApp for business, and then obviously from the social and brand monitoring point of view. So we like to say that we're a multi-channel marketing automation platform, and obviously we try to give our customers and any marketeers useful content, hence running webinars like this. But that is enough about Spotler. I'm going to hand you over to Tony to take us through mind reading and mind tricks. Over to you, Tony. Looking forward to this one.
Thanks very much, Simon. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, how to read people. I don't know about mind tricks, but the question we're going to explore in the next kind of 45 minutes is, can we really predict a person's behavior? There's an interesting question. And if we can really predict someone's behavior, will that enable us to build stronger relationships, build a relationship strategy that really works, and either sell more, work better in teams, or manage more, if we can predict how somebody might behave and how they are. So I don't know if there's any mind games to it, but we're going to explore a really simple and easy way to be able to do that. So to start with, though, to get us thinking about people and relationships, I'm a sales coach and a trainer that specializes in new business sales and relationship management within existing accounts. So to get us thinking about relationship management, I'd like you please to think of two people. Person A is somebody that you get on really, really well with. And you can jot this down on a piece of paper. Person B is somebody you find more challenging. So if you've got a piece of paper or you've got a device near you, please write down a description. I'm not going to ask you to share it, but write down a description of their personality and how they work. What makes you say that you get on really well with them, or what makes you say that you don't get on so well with them? Or maybe you find them a little bit challenging. Some people say to me sometimes that, you know, Tony, I get on well with most people, then that's great. But maybe it's somebody you find a little bit more challenging. So please do that now. So just jot down, and we're going to come back to this a little bit later on, particularly around person B. Can you predict their behavior? Can you work out what their personality style is? So please write a description. You could use a customer, a colleague, your boss, somebody you work with. Let me give you a minute to do that. So somebody you get on well with and somebody you find more challenging. Most people usually have lots to say about person B. They're like this and they do this and they do that, and have a lot to say about the way in which they work and how they are. So just write down a description of person A and person B. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. What is it they do? How do they work? What is it about their personalities or behaviours and the way in which they work that makes you say you get on really well with them, or that you find them more challenging? Okay, so we're going to spend a bit of time focusing on you first of all. In any communications or any relationship, there's two people. There's you and the other person. And of course, if you're working in a group or a team, there might be a group of other people. But the first thing I want to have a look at is understanding a little bit more about you, and what your natural style is, your natural way of working. And then what we can then do is move to the other person. And it's the other person when we can start to say, can we really predict their behavior and understand how they work? So to help with this, we're going to have a look at something called the empathy model. And the empathy model looks at what is your natural communication style? How do you naturally work? There was a study done quite a few years ago, was tested worldwide on just under 1 million people, based on some research from 2 psychologists that looks at what drives our behavior. And it discovered 7 different drives of behavior. That is the desire to be safe, competitiveness, competition. Some people are naturally very competitive, and some people aren't competitive at all. Some people like to communicate a lot, some people talk a lot, and some people don't talk as much or are less communicative. Creativity is around the desire for ideas and driving ideas. Commercial success, some people are highly motivated by money, other people less so. And some people say money is important to everybody, of course, but does it actually drive our decisions, our thinking, and our behavior? Completion of things was another drive. Some people have they start lots of projects. We start to build a shed in the garden, and then halfway through we get bored with that, and then we said, oh, actually, let's go and paint the lounge instead. But other people think, no, I've started this project, I've got to finish it. And then doing things the right way is another drive of behavior. So the first thing we're going to have a look at today is, can we understand what your behavior is? And if you can then understand a little bit more about these 7 different drives, we can then start to think, can we see these drives in other people? And that's where the reading people like a book really comes into play. So if you're up for this group this morning, we've got a questionnaire for you. I'm sure you've done lots and lots of these before. We've got 21 questions or 21 boxes here. And what we're going to have a look at is, this is about trying to help you understand what your drives are, and therefore what your natural communication style is. So you have a look at each box. For example, have a look at box number 1. And it's asking you, which set of words are you most like? Are you someone who's orderly, logical, fair, and likes to follow the rules? Set of words number 1. Or are you more commercial, materialistic, financially astute, and hard-headed? More like set of words number 2. So if you're more like set of words number 1, you just mark down a 1. And then you go to the second box. Are you most like set of words number 2, or most like set of words number 3? So not how you'd like to be, but how you think you are. What is the best description of how you actually are? And then between box 3 or between box 4. So what are you most like? And then you end up with scoring. Do it fairly quickly, group, not because we're short of time this morning, but don't overthink it. It's just a little bit of an indication, just to give us a starting point. And then when you've done it, you add up how many times you answered number 1, how many times you answered number 3, how many times you answered number 5, etc. And then you just get a little idea. This person scored high on number 4 and high on number 7. This person scored high on number 1 and high on number 3. There is absolutely no right or wrong answer. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to complete it now, group. Don't get too, don't get too hung up on the answers. Sometimes people say, is it like what I'm like at work or what I'm like at home? This is just generally, what do you think which set of words best describes the way you are generally, not based on your role or how you think you should be? Okay, I'll shut up for a minute, group. Do it fairly quickly, as I say, not because we're short of time, but just because don't overthink it. Off you go, group.
And yeah, just while you're thinking about that, I forgot to mention one thing. If you do have any questions throughout, put them in the questions part, because we've got a Q&A with Tony at the end of this. So if there's any questions, I'll bring them together and I can ask Tony at the end of the session.
Great, thanks, Simon. Or if any questions come up as we go along, Simon, just really happy for you just to just interrupt me. I'm quite happy for somebody to stop me talking. Excuse me. Great, thanks. Don't look back over your previous answers as you go, group. As I say, this is not a test or an exam. It's just to give us a bit of a starting point of a conversation around behaviours and communication skills. So don't overthink it, group. And as Simon said, if you've got any questions or about what we're doing or how it's working, please drop them in the into the question box, and Simon can pick those up and let me know. So make a note on a pad once you've done that of how many times you answered number 1, how many times you answered number 2, etc. How many times you answered number 3. Just give you another minute on that, group. Okay, in a minute, group, I'm gonna move to the next slide. So if you're still completing that, you're not quite there, you might just want to take a photograph of it on your phone if that's the easiest way, or take a quick screenshot so you can continue it if you've not quite finished. So please take a screenshot or a photograph of it on your phone so you continue. So we're going in about 30 seconds, I'm going to move to the next screen. So give you a chance to capture that if you still not quite completed it. Okay, going to move on in 10 seconds, group. So I say capture that on a screenshot or on your phone if you just need to, because we're going to lose this these 21 questions. We'll get copies of these at the end of the session as well. We'll get those sent across to you, so you will get a copy of this if you need to share it with other people or to finish it. Okay, so hopefully if you finish, that's absolutely great. Add up how many 1s you got, how many 2s, how many 3s, etc., and how many 4s. And if you haven't quite finished, hopefully you've got a screenshot or you've taken a picture on your phone so that we can continue. So let's have a look at what this means. This is about understanding our sort of natural communication style. But the reason for having a look at your style is once we understand the model, we can then start to think about other people. So let's have a look at what this means. So number 3, so if you scored a high on number 3, a high would be a kind of a 6 or a 5 really. So if you were attracted to set of words number 3 6 or 5 times, we would say that you were high in that particular drive of communication. And number 3 is, each one's got a name. Number 3 is called the mover, and this is the friendly, cheerful, upbeat, active and dynamic, likes to joke, likes to laugh, not very good on detail. Everything's either fantastic or it's a disaster. So it doesn't mean to say they can't do detail, but not good on detail, like kind of high level stuff. Go to a meeting with this type of person, you get lots and lots of rapport, lots of chat about the weather or the football or the coronation or anything else that might be happening. So their drive is to communicate. Number 4, so if you had scored high on number 4, this is the drive for security and tends to be somebody that's quite worrisome about things. My brother-in-law scores really, really high on this. Guess what car he drives? If the drive for security and safety is really high, guess what car he drives? Yes, he does. He drives a Volvo. And what does he worry about? The answer is most things. Most things. If I said to them, do you want to come up with my sister for the weekend and stay with us? We'd have questions about, well, what time and where we're going to eat and what we're going to do. And so lots and lots of questions. Hugely compassionate, caring, and very, very thoughtful. But can be quite worrisome about things, concerned about everything. How are you? Or ask them, how are you? Oh, not too bad today. Not too bad today. I say very caring and considerate and thoughtful in their personality. Number 5 is an interesting one. If you scored high on number 5, you answered set of words number 5 quite a lot. This is the creative one. Sensitive, shy, probably the quietest person in a group, so doesn't always say a lot, but fantastic, good visual imagination. If you say to the high artist, have you got an idea about what we could do with this? They'd come up with 3 or 4 or 5 different answers for you. Lots and lots of ideas. So the high artist, the creative drive. Number 6, set of words number 6 is the politician. We call them the politician. This is the desire to win and competitive. So as I said, some people are naturally very, very competitive and some people aren't. So this is a power-orientated, opinionated, results-driven, defends ideas really, really well. Just to give you an idea of what you can do with this, once you understand this model, if I was working with a politician, I would always look to give them choices. Give them 3 options. So if I was in sales or marketing and I'm sending them a proposal, I would always give them 3 options. Why? Because they like to make decisions and like to give their views and like to give their opinions. So that's a fantastic technique. And I can predict that they will make a decision because I've given them those options. But let me go back a bit here. Oh, sorry, okay, let me go back a bit to the double checker. You imagine if with the double checker, if I gave my brother-in-law 3 options in a proposal, from a sales perspective, that would be the worst thing I could do. And I could predict exactly what's going to happen. Guess what will happen? Never make a decision because they're too worried about which option is the best option. So I just need to present one option and give all the benefits as to why that works. So if I send a proposal to a double checker, I can predict what will happen with that proposal. It would be a long sales cycle. So this is where we start to think about the prediction of people's opinions and thoughts on things and how they work, just by understanding that their drive is for security, or in this case, the drive is for competitiveness. Number 7 is the high engineer. The high engineer. Love an Excel spreadsheet, the engineer. Detailed note takers, enthusiasm for projects, very hands-on, they know how things work, like a lot of structure, likes plans, systems, processes. Let me give you an idea, an example I often give. If you were, let's imagine you were in the center of London and you were asking for somebody, you asked somebody how to get to Buckingham Palace. assuming of course the person knows. From the high mover, the desire to communicate, number 3, if you ask the high mover, how do I get to Buckingham Palace? The answer you would simply get is you kind of go down this road, hang a right, and just kind of follow the signs. Just keep going. It's the answer you get from the mover. From the high engineer, if you said to the high engineer, how do I get to Buckingham Palace? They'd go, now, Buckingham Palace. Well, you go down this road for about 150 or maybe it's 165 meters, somewhere between 150 and 165 meters, and you turn right there, and that's called Buckingham Gate, and on the corner of there's a post box, and just opposite there's a pub called the King Arthur, and you go down. Get the idea? So there's no judgment about how somebody gives those directions, but just from the way in which they're communicating, I can start to understand whether I'm talking to a high engineer or whether I'm talking to a high mover. Okay, number 2. So if you answered quite heavily on number 2, this is the hustler and the desire for material success. A risk taker, very image conscious, talks about money and happy to talk about money quite frequently. I met somebody on a program I was running last week, and they came up to me and they said, I understand you work on communications and predicting people's behaviors and how teams work. I said, yes. He said, so what can you tell me about me? I said, you're very commercial. You're probably a great negotiator. He said, no, that's not my style at all. That's not how I work. So I said, okay, that's fine. So we started a conversation, and he said he's Italian, but he lives in Spain. And I said, why do you live in Spain rather than Italy? He said, because it's much, much cheaper. Properties are much, much cheaper in Spain. I can get a much, much better deal. And then told me about the prices of properties in Spain, the prices of property in Italy, and then how he got a wage increase and a bonus. So that the next 5 minutes of conversation was all about money. So hopefully I think I got that right. Desire for material success and drive about money. These people are really good commercially. And what do they want to negotiate? On absolutely everything. Number 1, if you scored high on number 1, you're pleased to know you are normal, whatever normal is these days. The normal is about doing things the right way. We don't park in the disabled spot. We are systematic and logical. If the meeting starts at 10 o'clock, then we arrive just before 10 o'clock. And we've got an agenda and we do introductions. So this is the kind of like to follow the rules, doing things the right way, the correct way of doing things. So that's an overview there, group, of the 7 different styles. And hopefully, if you've completed that questionnaire, that will give you an idea of where you kind of sit, where you're high. Are you someone that's quite competitive, high on number 6, competitive, direct, straight to the point, very businesslike? Or are you somebody that's more concerned about things and likes to discuss things and worried about things and can see the problems and difficulties within something? So most people would have 2 or 3 that will be high. But is your behavioral style about right? The questionnaire is just an indication. It's just an indication. There could be a particular word that sent you in one direction. So when I first did this myself, it says orderly, logical, fair, and follows the rules. I'd like to think I'm fairly orderly, logical, and fair, but I kind of don't always like to follow the rules. I'm not a rule breaker, but if I can find a way of bending the rules, I'm quite happy to do that. So every time I saw follow the rules, I went, oh no, that's not me. But the rest of it was a good description. So the questionnaire, it's correct for about 80 to 90% of people, but so for most people, it's very accurate, but for some people, it may not be. But it's just a start to really start to think about what is your natural style and your natural way of working. And when you then get to that, what that will tell you is, what are you communicating though in a style that works for the other person? So let me have a look at this. If we go to the high politician, so if I'm a high mover, desire to communicate, friendly, cheerful, distractible, like lots of rapport, lots of chat, and I'm going into an internal meeting with my general manager, who happens to be a high politician, and I go, "Hi Tori, how you doing? How was the weekend and what was happening?" She wants to go, "Can we just get on with this? I'm really short, I've got another meeting to go to, can we get on with it?" And it's not that she's unfriendly, but what I can then do is I can predict how she might be in that meeting. So I might then decide to adapt my communication style when working with that particular person. So this is the idea of the empathy styles, is about communicating in a style that works for the other person. But of course, the question is, can we recognize the other person? Can we recognize their own particular empathy style? And if we can do that, of course, the easiest way to do that would be to give them the questionnaire. So we work a lot with teams and helping teams with this, and how they work together and how they communicate together. And of course, the easiest thing there is to give them the questionnaire. But if we can't, but we can recognize someone else's behavior, the question is, can we then really predict a person's behavior and read them like a book? My answer is absolutely. I totally believe we can. I love this phrase. Who you are speaks so loudly, I can hardly hear you. Who you are speaks so loudly, I can hardly hear you. So when I met that gentleman on the course last week, he gave himself away so easily and so quickly for me to help understand what his drives and way of communicating is. But we need to be looking for the clues. What happens is, most of the time when we meet somebody, what we're usually doing is thinking about ourselves. What am I saying? What am I going to say next? What am I talking? What am I getting out of this conversation or this meeting? Excuse me. So when we meet somebody for the first time, we just need to do 3 simple things: think, listen, and look. What are they talking about? What do they look like? What are they saying? How are they communicating? The biggest clue for me is how somebody talks and what they talk about. So with the high engineer, as I described when looking to how to get to Buckingham Palace, we get fairly long descriptions of things, describing things in lots of detail. I'm very hands-on. The artist doesn't really say very much, might avoid a bit of eye contact with you. The desire to be different is quite high. So it tends to be a bit more quieter, a bit more reflective, and particularly in meetings as well. The high movers, big smile, cracks a joke, happy to have a laugh, and try and make a joke, and make it a very rapport-based meeting. So lots of conversational chit-chat. So if we can then stop and just think for a minute about the other person and how they are, then we can start to profile them to say, what do I think their strong styles are? So this is absolutely not, though, about getting the profile 100% correct. That's not what we're saying. We're not looking to profile somebody from a marketing perspective or look at their different personas. What we're just saying is, can I get an understanding of what your natural communication style is? And then if I can see how to best work with you and how to best communicate with you. And of course, the reason we started with talking about ourselves is because the first thing we need to do is understand how we naturally communicate in the first place. You can look at all sorts of things. You can look at people's online profile about how they describe themselves and the language they use. So I'm going to a meeting this afternoon. I've already looked at the person's profile online. They come from a very engineering type background. There's lots of detail about what they've done in the past and how they are. They've got a photograph of them sitting at their desk, and behind them is loads and loads of books and information. So I don't know that they're an engineer, but I can get some idea that detail and process and system is going to be quite important. So I'm taking along certain information that will help in that meeting, hopefully, if that's the case. Of course, I might need to be prepared to change my mind when I get there, but I literally have started to think about the behaviours and how they might work in that meeting. So let's go back to your person B. And I've gone through this team super fast speed for you today, but just to give you a bit of an indication and hopefully to have some fun with it. So back to your person A and your person B that hopefully you made some notes on right at the beginning of this. Can you now start to identify their particular empathy styles? Sometimes they may be the opposite to you, not always, but they may be the opposite to you. So particularly your person B, do you think they're high engineer? Do you think they're high double checker? Do you think they're a high mover? What is it about how they work and how they are? If we listen to how they talk. We did some work a few years ago with a credit card company. I can't mention their name, we're not allowed to share that, but they have a best customer unit. And what they did in terms of identifying people, they then said, if you were recognized as one of their best customers, when you called in, they'd recognize the number and you go through to this best customer unit. So they did some work with this. And they believe they record all calls because they're in that kind of industry. And they believe that within 17 seconds of somebody calling into them, that they could start to understand the empathy style of a particular person that was calling in. You think, wow, how is that really possible? So what they did, if you imagine, you have a look at this, and this is about moving on to then, how do we need to be and what do we need to do when working or communicating with somebody or predicting their behaviors? Could this company really, within 17 seconds of a call, read them like a book? The answer was yes. Let me give you, I'm not an actor here, but let me just give you a couple of examples. Somebody calls in to the credit card company. Let's imagine they've lost their credit card. And when they call in, they go, oh, hi, I'm really sorry to trouble you. I think I've lost my credit card. I'm not too sure where I've lost my credit card. I think that, I'm just worried that somebody's spent some money on it and I need to make sure the card's cancelled so nobody can spend money on it. What do we get? High double checker. Okay, so that's again, this is not to label people or to put people in a box, but just saying I can see that this person is quite concerned and quite worried. Okay, somebody else calls in, says, oh, hiya, how you doing? So I was out on Saturday and I've lost my credit card. I don't know where I've lost it. I think I've lost it in the car where I was trying to pay for a holiday, but absolute nightmare. So I've got to get a new credit card and I'll have to try and pay for the holiday in some other way. What do we get? High mover. High politician calls into the credit card company, says, hello, I've lost my card. I need to send a new one. Could you send me one out straight away, please? Formal, to the point, quite direct. So they believe they can say, not in every case, but in most of the cases, they could start to think about the style of communication of the person they were working with. And that then enables them to predict how they might think and how they are, but also tells them how they need to be and what they need to do. Here's something really, really clever they then did. The next day, they would call back the double checker in the morning. Bear in mind, this was the best customer unit, as they want to look after their best customers. They call the double checker, and guess what they tell them? Just to let you know, we've been monitoring your credit card for 24 hours and nobody's spent on the credit card. It's definitely been cancelled. There's nothing been spent on it. Guess what the double checker says? Can we predict what they would say? Oh, thank goodness for that. Thank you so much. That's really, I was worried about that last night and was concerned that somebody might still have spent on it. Imagine calling the politician and saying, hello, just to let you know, the credit card has definitely been cancelled and no money's been spent on in the last 24 hours. The high politician goes, yeah, why are you calling me? You said you cancelled it yesterday. Why are you bothering me? I'm in the middle of a meeting. Not right or wrong, but really helps you to start to think about how do you need to be and what do you need to do when working with somebody and their particular style. Communicating in a style that works for the other person. The question here is, are you working in a way that works for them? And if not, and you can't really think about their personality and behaviors and how they work, if you can't predict it, then don't risk it. The best thing to do, our advice would be ask them. Ask them. What do I mean? If you're sending a sales proposal or some documentation to somebody, so if you're a marketeer and you're sharing some information, ask them the question, how would you like to see the information? What would you like in the documentation? How do I best engage with you? What do you look for when working with suppliers? I did this for a client a few weeks ago, and I said, I'm preparing a proposal for you. What do you want it to look like? How do you want it to be? I kind of think I already knew the answer because they were a high mover, but I still asked the question. And they said, Tony, just jot it down on an email for us. Put it on an email, don't do anything formal. I said, fantastic, will do. So that saved me a huge amount of time. I'm also at the moment completing a proposal for a high engineer. I'm currently at 15 slides on a PowerPoint slide because I know they want all the information about how we put together the training program, what it looks like, and our 15-step implementation process to get us to the point of delivering the training in 6 months' time. So really asking the questions if we're not quite sure, if we can't predict their behavior or how they may respond, we can try and get ahead of it when working or communicating with someone. So this is about being authentic though, and being yourself. This isn't about, can you adapt your behavior and tactics while remaining yourself? It's not becoming an acting job, so you suddenly become someone different. So if you can just really be more conscious in how you're communicating and how you're working with somebody, particularly your person B. So we go back to your person B, you can't change person B. It will be fantastic if you could say, yeah, I wish they weren't in my team, or I wish I wasn't working with person B. But we can be more conscious of how we're working with them. So now if we understand a bit about our empathy style, are there things that you're doing that you could be more conscious of that would then change that relationship? We can't change them, but we can change the way in which we work with them. So to me, good empathy and good communication skills is around being more conscious of how we come across, and are we working in the way that's most beneficial to the other person. So that, I really hope you've enjoyed that. I do have some time for questions, but before I do that, I'm just going to hand back to Simon. We said we've got about 45 minutes, so we've got a few minutes for questions. But just to hand back to Simon, just to talk about some of the things that are coming up, Simon, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Tony. There are some questions coming in, but please feel free to ask some more, and then I'll ask Tony them. Mine was just to let you know we've got some more great webinars coming up. That if you go on the website /events, we've got some great webinars about website personalization, creating content, delivering critical emails, transactional emails, and also building automation journeys. So it was just a case to say I'd love to see you at a few more of these webinars. So that's all. So Tony, we've got a couple of questions. One I've got here is how, obviously I think this might be a customer on the call, but for doing email comms or website copy and so forth, how would you try and put those personality types into the copy? Is it a case of obviously understanding your audience first and then writing maybe different copy, or trying to put that copy into one that fits the main profiles?
Yeah, great question. Thanks so much, Simon. Thanks to the person that asked the question. If we in our business, we send out an invite to a particular event, and we're writing copy, we might have 3 or 4 different invitations depending on the target audience. So if I'm going to write to a sales director, and it's a huge generalization, but you'll see a lot more hustlers and politicians, we would say this is a webinar for senior people only, and it's a very business focused, results driven webinar to help you drive your business going forward. If I was talking to, we also then send out another invite, another email, where we're talking about a fun, interactive, highly engaging workshop. So we would send out 3 or 4 different types of copy text in an email, inviting people with very different messages, because we know certain messages respond well to different people. So
And how do you manage that with a physical event then? Because obviously you've got then different personalities in the room, but yet you've got one deck, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but once they're there, we're okay with that. The first goal is to get them. The first goal is to get them there. But it is a little bit more challenge. But you can still be business focused, but make it fun and engaging, hopefully. But the question was, do we have different types of text and copy? Yes, we absolutely do. But without going into long explanation around marketing is not my area of expertise. Sales is. But if you've got your website, what is the persona of the type of people that you're attracting? What do they generally be? Are they generally more technical, or are they generally more business-like? So
yeah, I think this falls into this one. Somebody's asked, they work for a membership or association. They're saying, how would it be best to gauge an entire population rather than individuals? So I think what they mean is, should they, how far would you cut stuff down, or would you?
yeah, I'd be interested in what sort of membership they are. But if you're in a certain type of membership, might attract a certain style of people. So if you've got a marketing organization, we would expect to see a certain type of profile of empathy. If somebody's joining the Institute of Directors, that attracts lots of politicians that are more status focused.
They're a clinical research auditors.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So you're likely, a huge generalization, you're likely to meet lots of engineers, so very detailed planners, and lots of normals, you'll see in research, and some double checkers. So I would look, it's a huge generalization, and of course you will meet everybody in those kind of areas. But given that kind of profile, I would steer more towards engineers, normals, and double checkers profile. So your messaging would be geared towards that type of persona.
I've got 2 questions here, Tony. I think it's around, I remember I had these questions when I first did it with you, but so we've got someone that says, what if someone falls between 2 categories, say hustler and politician? They're quite different. How do you deal with them? And we've got another one saying that they've fallen between communicator and artist, which seems contradictory.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, any style is possible. What it just means, so like if I take the mover artist, because it's quite an extreme one, so you get the mover that's chatty, friendly, and outgoing. You get the artist that's quieter, shy, and more reserved. So I think when you're working with them or you meet with them, they may be either of those at any given time. So it's almost sort of kind of sitting back until you understand where they are at that time. So sometimes in meetings, they might go very quiet, not say very much, and become more the artist. But there may be times when they're very lively and outgoing. So it's perfect. You just got to have an awareness that actually either of those might appear at any particular time. So if you're working with a hustler and politician, you're going to get a good negotiator and someone that's very businesslike. So if you're explaining your proposition, you want to go more with the business-like, but when it comes to the negotiations and your proposal, be prepared that you're going to get a very strong negotiator back. So it's just an awareness that people can be either at any given time.
I've got one more, which is more around, I think it's more around the research that you mentioned at the start, and any further reading on who wrote those personality types and so forth.
Yeah, it originally comes from Humm and Wadsworth, Humm, and Wadsworth, WAD, Wadsworth, and it looks at people's competencies. So it's a competency framework. So they were the psychologists that developed it. And then another person you could Google is Chris Golis, Gollis, Chris Golis. And he's written quite a few books just specifically around this particular model. There's lots and lots of layers. It comes from a full psychological profiling system where you'd answer 240 questions and they'd probably tell you what you had for breakfast. I'd love to share more with you. There's just only so much we can do in such a short space of time. I think what we were looking to do here was just really give you some sort of an insight and some thinking around how you can do it and what you can do to predict people's behaviours.
On that note, Tony, I think that's a great end to the session. So I'd like to say thank you very much. Thank you for everybody that was on the session. Obviously, if you would like to follow up with Tony, he's on LinkedIn. We will send his connections around when we send the recording and the slides out. But if you can't wait until then, I'm sure Tony, he's easy to find on LinkedIn. And for anybody on the session that wants to have a chat with us about marketing automation platforms and so forth, we'd be more than happy to have that chat. But I'm going to let you go. It's brunch, almost lunch. If anybody's at the Retail Tech Show this week, I'll see you there. If not, hopefully we'll see you at one of these other webinars. And thank you very much, Tony.
Lovely. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.